New York City, 1987. A full-page advertisement appears in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Boston Globe. It costs nearly $100,000. The headline reads, "There's nothing wrong with America's foreign defense policy that a little backbone can't cure." The ad criticizes American foreign policy, questions military spending, and demands that allies pay their fair share. It's signed by a real estate developer from Queens, a man most Americans have never heard of. His name is Donald Trump, and he's just announced himself to the world. Fast forward to 2016. That same man descends a golden escalator in Trump Tower, calls Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals, and announces he's running for President of the United States. Political experts laugh. He has no political experience, no filter, and no chance. 16 Republican opponents stand in his way. The Democratic frontrunner is one of the most qualified candidates in history. 18 months later, Donald Trump is President of the United States. It was the most unlikely political story in American history. A billionaire real estate developer and reality TV star with no government experience defeated dynasties, defied predictions, and rewrote the rules of American politics. He became the most powerful person on earth, while being the most divisive president in modern memory. But the story doesn't start with politics. It starts in Queens, with a father who built an empire and a son determined to surpass him. It winds through Manhattan real estate deals, Atlantic City casinos, best-selling books, celebrity feuds, bankruptcies, comebacks, and a reality show that made him more famous than ever. It's a story about ambition, branding, controversy, and an unshakable belief in winning at all costs. Love him or despise him, and in America, there's rarely middle ground. Donald Trump changed everything. This is his story. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York, the fourth of 5 children. His father, Fred Trump, was a successful real estate developer who built affordable housing in Brooklyn and Queens. His mother, Mary Ann MacLeod Trump, was a Scottish immigrant who had come to America in 1930 as a young woman seeking opportunity. The Trump family was wealthy, but not Manhattan wealthy. They lived in a large house in Jamaica Estates, an affluent Queens neighborhood, but this was the outer boroughs, not Manhattan's glittering elite world. Fred Trump built middle-class apartment buildings, not glamorous skyscrapers. The Trumps had money, but they were bridge and tunnel people in a city where Manhattan was everything. Young Donald absorbed lessons from his father that would shape his entire life. Fred Trump was tough, demanding, and relentlessly focused on winning. He taught his children that life was combat, that the world was divided into winners and losers, and that you had to be a killer or you'd be killed. "You have to be tough," Fred would say. Everything was negotiation. Everything was a fight. And you had to win. Fred also taught Donald about the importance of image and publicity. Fred cultivated relationships with politicians, gave campaign contributions strategically, and understood that perception shaped reality. He taught Donald that it didn't matter what you were, it mattered what people thought you were. Donald was an aggressive, confident child, some would say a bully. He was energetic, competitive, and always the center of attention. In 2nd grade, he punched his music teacher in the face, giving him a black eye. The incident revealed a personality trait that would persist. Donald didn't accept authority he didn't respect, and he responded to challenges with aggression. By age 13, Donald's behavior had become too much for his parents to handle. He was argumentative, rebellious, and frequently in trouble. Fred and Mary sent him to New York Military Academy, a private boarding school where discipline and structure might channel his energy productively. The military school experience shaped Trump significantly. He thrived in the competitive environment. He became a student leader, captain of the baseball team, and graduated in 1964 with honors. The school taught him about hierarchy, loyalty, and projecting strength. It reinforced the lessons his father had taught about being tough and winning. But military school also taught Donald something else. You could game any system if you understood how it worked. You could project an image of discipline while still doing what you wanted. You could win respect through performance and bravado rather than genuine achievement. These lessons would serve him throughout his life. After military school, Donald attended Fordham University in the Bronx for 2 years, then transferred to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania in 1966. Wharton was one of America's top business schools, and Donald would later claim, frequently and loudly, that he graduated top of his class from Wharton. Records show he graduated, but there's no evidence he graduated with honors. But this distinction between what was true and what made a better story would become a Trump trademark. During his college years, Donald received draft deferments that kept him out of the Vietnam War. He received 4 student deferments while in college. Then, in 1968, after graduation, he received a medical deferment for bone spurs in his heels. Decades later, this would become controversial. Critics accused him of dodging the draft, while less privileged young men went to fight and die. Trump said his deferment was legitimate and that his draft number was high anyway. In 1968, Donald graduated from Wharton and joined his father's company, Elizabeth Trump & Son. He was 22 years old, educated, aggressive, and hungry to prove himself. But he was also still stuck in the outer boroughs, building middle-class housing in Brooklyn and Queens. Donald wanted more. He wanted Manhattan. He wanted to be somebody. His father had built a fortune in the boroughs. Donald wanted to build an empire in the city. Donald Trump's entry into Manhattan real estate came through a combination of ambition, timing, connections, and his father's money. In the early 1970s, New York City was in crisis. Crime was soaring, businesses were fleeing, and the city was heading toward bankruptcy. Real estate values had collapsed. To most people, it looked like a disaster. To Donald, it looked like an opportunity. His first major project was the transformation of the Commodore Hotel, a decaying property next to Grand Central Terminal. The hotel was losing money, and the owners wanted out. Donald, then in his late 20s and with no track record in Manhattan, convinced them to partner with him. He would renovate the hotel and rebrand it as the Grand Hyatt. The deal required massive financing and a tax abatement from the city. Donald had neither money nor political connections, but his father did. Fred Trump's relationships with Brooklyn politicians and his willingness to provide financial backing were crucial. Fred guaranteed the construction loans. Donald negotiated a 40-year tax abatement worth tens of millions of dollars from a desperate city government. The Grand Hyatt opened in 1980 and was a success. Donald had proven he could operate in Manhattan. More importantly, he'd proven he could get deals done through aggressive negotiation, political maneuvering, and shameless self-promotion. He was 24 when the deal started, 34 when the hotel opened, and he'd established himself as a major player. In 1971, Donald renamed his father's company the Trump Organization and moved its headquarters to Manhattan. The message was clear. This wasn't Fred Trump's outer borough operation anymore. This was Donald's Manhattan empire. Trump's next target was the most visible piece of real estate in New York, Fifth Avenue. In 1979, he acquired the site of the old Bonwit Teller department store and announced plans for Trump Tower, a 58-story mixed-use building with retail offices and luxury condominiums. Trump Tower became Donald's signature achievement and masterpiece of self-promotion. The building featured a stunning 6-story atrium with pink marble and a waterfall. The apartments were luxurious and expensive. Donald made himself the building's chief salesman, personally showing apartments to wealthy buyers and celebrities. But Trump Tower was also controversial from the start. During demolition of the old building, Trump promised to preserve decorative Art Deco friezes and donate them to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Instead, they were destroyed. Trump claimed it would have been too expensive and time-consuming to preserve them. Critics accused him of lying and destroying art for profit. The construction also involved the use of undocumented Polish workers. The Polish Brigade, who worked in dangerous conditions for low wages, sometimes sleeping on the site. Years later, lawsuits alleged Trump had knowingly used illegal workers and failed to pay them properly. Trump denied wrongdoing, but the episode revealed a pattern. He would do whatever it took to get projects done, and he'd fight any accusation rather than admit fault. Trump Tower opened in 1983 to enormous publicity. Donald had plastered his name in giant gold letters on the building. Inside, he created a penthouse apartment for himself and his family. A 3-story, 30,000 square foot space, decorated in gold and marble, with ceilings painted like the Sistine Chapel. It was opulent, ostentatious, and perfect for his image. Donald had married Ivana Zelničková, a Czech model and athlete, in 1977. They had 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. Ivana was ambitious and involved in Trump's business, eventually running the Plaza Hotel and working on casino developments. For a time, they were New York's golden couple, young, rich, glamorous, and constantly in the tabloids. Throughout the 1980s, Donald expanded aggressively. He bought the New Jersey Generals, a team in the upstart United States Football League. He pushed the league to compete directly with the NFL by moving to a full schedule, a strategy that backfired spectacularly and killed the league. The USFL sued the NFL for antitrust violations and won, but was awarded only $1 in damages. The league folded in 1986. Trump ventured into Atlantic City casinos, seeing gambling as a path to even greater wealth. He built Trump Plaza in 1984 and Trump Castle in 1985, then acquired the Taj Mahal Casino in 1988. He financed these projects with high-interest junk bonds, borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars. He bought the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan in 1988 for $410 million, much of it borrowed. He bought the Eastern Airlines shuttle and renamed it Trump Shuttle. He put his name on everything. Trump Plaza, Trump Castle, Trump Tower, Trump Park, Trump Palace, Trump this, Trump that. The strategy was brilliant branding. The Trump name became synonymous with luxury, wealth, and success. Donald appeared on magazine covers, gave interviews, cultivated celebrity friendships. He hired a public relations person to pose as a spokesperson named John Barron or John Miller, and would call reporters to plant positive stories about himself. Later, investigations revealed that these spokespeople were actually Donald himself using fake names. In 1987, Donald published The Art of the Deal, written with journalist Tony Schwartz. The book was part autobiography, part business manual, and entirely self-promotion. It portrayed Trump as a master negotiator, a brilliant businessman, and a winner. The book became a bestseller and made Trump a national figure beyond New York. People across America read about his deals, his strategy, and his philosophy. Think big, be tough, fight back, and never apologize. By 1989, Donald Trump appeared to be on top of the world. He was wealthy, famous, successful. He owned hotels, casinos, an airline, real estate across Manhattan. His name was everywhere. His marriage produced beautiful children. He was living the American dream on steroids. But it was all built on debt, and the foundation was cracking. The 1990s began with catastrophe for Donald Trump. His Atlantic City casinos, financed with junk bonds carrying brutal interest rates, couldn't generate enough revenue to service their debt. His other properties were similarly over-leveraged. The real estate market crashed. Trump's airline was losing money, His debts exceeded his assets by hundreds of millions of dollars. In 1990, Trump's financial empire nearly collapsed. He owed personally guaranteed debts of $975 million. His casinos alone carried $3.4 billion in debt. The interest payments were crushing. Banks that had enthusiastically lent to him in the boom years now faced the prospect of massive losses if Trump declared bankruptcy. Trump negotiated with dozens of banks for months. The banks had a choice: force Trump into personal bankruptcy and take huge losses, or restructure his debts and hope he could recover. They chose restructuring, but with strict conditions. Trump had to give up control of many properties. He was put on a personal allowance, reportedly $450,000 per month, pocket change for his previous lifestyle, but humiliating for someone who styled himself a billionaire. The Trump shuttle was sold. The Trump Princess yacht was sold. Properties were liquidated. The Taj Mahal casino filed for bankruptcy in 1991. Trump's personal life also imploded. His affair with Marla Maples, a model and actress, became public. Ivana discovered the affair and was furious. The divorce battle was spectacular and tabloid-feeding entertainment. Ivana famously confronted Marla at a restaurant in Aspen, reportedly saying, "Give me my husband back." The New York tabloids went wild. The divorce was finalized in 1992. Ivana received $14 million, the Connecticut mansion, an apartment in Trump Plaza, and 49% of Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Palm Beach estate. Donald married Marla in 1993, months after she gave birth to their daughter, Tiffany. The marriage would last only 4 years. Trump's business reputation was in tatters. He was seen as a failure, an over-leveraged fraud who had crashed spectacularly. Late-night comedians mocked him. Business journalists wrote obituaries for his career. The art of the deal master had made terrible deals. The winner was a loser. But Trump refused to accept failure. He fought back with the only weapons he had: his name and his ability to promote himself. If the Trump name still had value, he could license it. He couldn't afford to build buildings anymore, but he could put his name on buildings other people built and take a cut. Throughout the mid-1990s, Trump rebuilt slowly through licensing deals, casino refinancing, and selling assets. He licensed his name to condominium developments worldwide. Developers would pay to call their building Trump International or Trump Tower, even though Trump didn't own them. It was passive income based purely on brand value. He also focused on Mar-a-Lago, the Palm Beach estate he'd bought in 1985. He converted it into a private club, selling memberships for $100,000 each. The club became profitable and prestigious, hosting wealthy members and providing Trump with a social base in Florida. The Atlantic City casinos cycled through multiple bankruptcies in 1991, 1992, 2004, and 2009. Each time, creditors took losses while Trump's personal exposure was limited. Critics accused him of using bankruptcy laws to shield himself, while workers and investors suffered. Trump said he was just using the system intelligently, and that only losers stayed loyal to losing businesses. Gradually, impossibly, Trump's image recovered. Americans have short memories and love comeback stories. By the late 1990s, Trump was being portrayed not as a failure, but as a survivor, a fighter who'd been knocked down and gotten back up. He appeared on Howard Stern's radio show, where he cultivated a persona as a playboy and straight talker. He made cameos in movies and TV shows. He wrote more books. In 2000, Trump briefly explored running for president as a Reform Party candidate. He didn't seriously pursue it, but the media coverage reminded America that Trump existed and still had opinions. He withdrew before any primaries, but the experience planted a seed. Trump married for the third time in 2005 to Melania Knauss, a Slovenian model. She was 24 years younger than Donald. They had a son, Baron, in 2006. Trump was 60 years old, a father again, and on the verge of becoming more famous than ever. Because, in 2004, a television producer named Mark Burnett approached Trump with an idea for a reality show. It would be called The Apprentice, and it would make Donald Trump a household name across America. The Apprentice premiered on NBC in January 2004. The premise was simple. 16 contestants competed for a job running one of Trump's companies. They would complete business-related challenges, and Trump would eliminate one contestant each week with his signature phrase, "You're fired." The show was an instant hit. Millions of Americans tuned in weekly to watch Trump play the decisive, no-nonsense businessman. He was portrayed as a brilliant deal-maker, a successful tycoon, a winner who lived in golden apartments and flew in private helicopters. It was the Trump mythology refined and broadcast into American living rooms every week. The timing was perfect. Reality TV was exploding in popularity. Americans loved watching wealthy people, competitions, and dramatic confrontations. The Apprentice provided all three, with Trump at the center as the ultimate authority figure. What viewers didn't know, or didn't care about, was how carefully produced the show was. Trump's business acumen was exaggerated. His role in actually evaluating contestants was limited. His boardroom decisions were heavily influenced by producers. The show was entertainment, not reality, but it created a perception of Trump as a decisive business genius. The Apprentice ran for 14 seasons through 2015, spawning a celebrity version and making Trump a reported $214 million. More valuable than the money was the brand rehabilitation. Trump went from tabloid punchline to American icon. His catchphrase became part of pop culture. His image as a successful businessman was cemented in the American consciousness. During this period, Trump also became increasingly political, though not in traditional ways. He criticized the Iraq War. He questioned whether Barack Obama was born in the United States, becoming the most prominent birther spreading conspiracy theories about the first black president. He gave interviews about how he would handle various issues differently if he were in charge. The birther conspiracy was particularly significant. Starting around 2011, Trump repeatedly demanded that Obama release his birth certificate, suggesting Obama might not be an American citizen and therefore an illegitimate president. When Obama finally released his long-form birth certificate in 2011, Trump claimed credit for forcing the disclosure, but never apologized for spreading the conspiracy theory. The birther campaign had multiple effects. It ingratiated Trump with conservatives who opposed Obama. It demonstrated Trump's willingness to make inflammatory statements without evidence. It showed he could generate massive media attention by being provocative. And it revealed, or created, a base of Americans willing to believe conspiracy theories about established institutions. Trump flirted with presidential runs in 2000 and 2012, but never committed. Each time, he generated media coverage, floated his name, tested the waters, then decided against running. Critics said he was just seeking attention. Supporters said he was being strategic, waiting for the right moment. Throughout this period, Trump lived the lifestyle his TV persona suggested. He owned properties worldwide, traveled by private jet, married a model, and surrounded himself with gold and luxury. His children from his first marriage, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, were now adults working in the Trump Organization. They appeared on The Apprentice and cultivated their own public profiles. Trump was active on social media, particularly Twitter, which he joined in 2009. He tweeted constantly about celebrities, politics, his shows, his properties, and anything else on his mind. His tweets were often provocative, sometimes offensive, and always attention-grabbing. He built a massive following by being unfiltered and controversial. By 2015, Donald Trump was 70 years old, wealthier than he'd been since the 80s. though his actual net worth was constantly disputed. Famous across America, and as confident as ever, he had survived bankruptcy, divorce, business failures, and public humiliation. He had rebuilt his brand and his fortune. He was, in his own estimation and that of millions of Americans, a winner. On June 16, 2015, Donald Trump announced he was running for President of the United States. This time, he was serious. And almost nobody thought he could win. Donald Trump's campaign announcement was quintessentially Trump. He descended the golden escalator in Trump Tower with Melania at his side. He spoke for 45 minutes without notes, rambling but energetic. He announced his candidacy, then said, "When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people." Political experts were appalled. This was not how you launched a presidential campaign. You didn't insult entire ethnic groups. You didn't use inflammatory language. You worked from prepared remarks. Trump had violated every rule of modern politics in his opening statement. Except, it worked. The media coverage was enormous. Trump dominated every news cycle. While other Republican candidates struggled for attention, Trump was all anyone talked about. His poll numbers climbed. The Republican primary field was crowded. 17 candidates, including governors, senators, and political dynasties. Jeb Bush, son and brother of presidents, was the early favorite with massive financial backing. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, John Kasich, and others brought political experience and traditional qualifications. Trump had none of that. He had never held elected office. He had no detailed policy positions. His understanding of government was superficial at best. But he had something the others lacked: an instinct for performance, an understanding of media, and a willingness to say what others wouldn't. Trump's campaign strategy was simple: dominate the news cycle by being outrageous, attack opponents viciously with nicknames and insults, promise simple solutions to complex problems, and portray himself as a political outsider who would drain the swamp in Washington. He called Jeb Bush low energy. He called Marco Rubio Little Marco. He called Ted Cruz Lion Ted. These weren't policy critiques, they were playground insults. And they stuck. Bush never recovered from the low energy label. Rubio was diminished by Little Marco. Trump dominated his opponents through branding and humiliation. His policy positions were often contradictory or vague, but his themes were clear and resonated with a significant portion of Republican voters. Build a wall on the Mexican border and make Mexico pay for it. Ban Muslims from entering the United States. Renegotiate trade deals. Bring back manufacturing jobs. And make America great again. The slogan was brilliant. It was nostalgic, implying America had been great and wasn't anymore. It was hopeful, promising restoration. It was vague enough that different people could project different meanings onto it. And it fit perfectly on a red baseball cap. Trump's rallies were unlike anything in modern American politics. They were entertainment events, with Trump riffing for an hour or more, attacking opponents, mocking protesters, making promises, telling stories, and generating infectious energy among supporters. The crowds loved him. The media covered every rally live, giving Trump billions of dollars in free publicity. Trump said things that would have ended other campaigns. He mocked a disabled reporter. He suggested a female debate moderator was hostile because she was menstruating. He boasted about his genitalia in a debate. He refused to release his tax returns. He proposed surveillance of mosques and registering Muslims. Each controversy generated outrage, and each time, analysts predicted it would finally end his campaign. It never did. His supporters didn't care about the controversies, or actively loved that he was upsetting political correctness and liberal elites. Trump had discovered something profound. A significant portion of the American electorate was so angry at the establishment, so frustrated with traditional politicians, and so responsive to his style that normal political rules didn't apply. One by one, Trump's opponents fell. He won primary after primary, sometimes with pluralities rather than majorities, but enough to accumulate delegates. By May 2016, he had effectively clinched the Republican nomination. The party establishment was horrified, but powerless. Trump had conquered the Republican Party. The general election pitted Trump against Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, Senator, and First Lady. Clinton was one of the most qualified presidential candidates in history. She had policy expertise, government experience, and a detailed command of issues. She was also deeply unpopular with many Americans, carrying baggage from decades in politics and controversies, including her use of a private email server as Secretary of State. Trump's attacks on Clinton were relentless. He called her Crooked Hillary. His rallies featured chants of, "Lock her up." He promised to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate her if he won. He exploited every controversy, every leaked email, every piece of opposition research. The campaign was bitter and unprecedented in modern American politics. Trump faced allegations from multiple women of sexual misconduct. The Access Hollywood tape from 2005 surfaced, in which Trump was recorded bragging about grabbing women sexually without consent. The tape seemed likely to end his campaign. It didn't. Trump apologized in the most minimal way possible, called it locker room talk, and attacked Bill Clinton's sexual history in response. His core supporters stayed loyal. The election became a choice between two deeply unpopular candidates, with different voters hating each for different reasons. Every poll, every expert, and every prediction model showed Clinton winning. The New York Times gave her an 85% chance of victory on Election Day. Trump's path to victory required winning multiple swing states that hadn't voted Republican in decades. It seemed impossible. On November 8, 2016, Americans voted. As returns came in, the impossible happened. Trump won Florida, he won Ohio, he won North Carolina. Then he won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, states Clinton had taken for granted and barely campaigned in. At 2:30 in the morning on November 9th, Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump and conceded. Donald Trump had been elected the 45th President of the United States. He lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes, but won the Electoral College decisively. It was the greatest political upset in American history. The man who had never held elected office, who had been mocked by experts, who had violated every rule of modern campaigning, would become the most powerful person in the world. Donald Trump was inaugurated as president on January 20th, 2017. His inaugural address was dark and combative, painting America as a nation in decline, besieged by problems and in need of rescue. "This American carnage stops right here and stops right now," Trump declared. The crowd size for the inauguration immediately became controversial. Trump claimed it was the largest in history. Photographs showed it clearly wasn't. When the National Park Service tweeted photos showing the comparative crowd sizes, the Trump administration forced them to delete the tweets. Trump's press secretary held a press conference to insist, against photographic evidence, that it was the largest inauguration crowd ever. This pattern, Trump making false statements, officials supporting those statements despite evidence, and Trump attacking anyone who contradicted him, would define his presidency. Trump's governing style was chaotic from the start. He made major policy announcements via Twitter. He hired and fired advisors rapidly. He feuded with members of his own administration. He refused daily intelligence briefings, preferring single-page summaries with lots of pictures and graphics. Within the first week, Trump signed an executive order banning travel from several majority Muslim countries. The order sparked protests at airports nationwide and legal challenges that eventually reached the Supreme Court. Courts initially blocked the ban, but Trump revised it multiple times until a version was upheld. His relationship with the media was openly hostile. He called mainstream news outlets fake news and the enemy of the people. He revoked press credentials for critical reporters. He praised Fox News and conservative media that supported him while attacking everyone else. Press briefings became confrontational spectacles. Trump's first year saw constant turnover in his administration. National Security Advisor Michael Flynn resigned after only 24 days over lying about contacts with the Russian ambassador. Press Secretary Sean Spicer resigned. Chief of Staff Reince Priebus was fired and replaced by General John Kelly. Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci lasted 11 days. The Russia investigation dominated Trump's presidency. US intelligence agencies concluded that Russia had interfered in the 2016 election to help Trump win. Special counsel Robert Mueller was appointed in May 2017 to investigate whether the Trump campaign had colluded with Russia and whether Trump had obstructed justice. Trump called the investigation a witch hunt and attacked Mueller personally. He fired FBI Director James Comey, later admitting on television that he did so because of the Russia investigation. Trump reportedly tried to fire Mueller multiple times but was dissuaded by advisors. The Mueller report, released in redacted form in 2019, found that Russia had indeed interfered but did not establish that the Trump campaign had conspired with Russia. On obstruction of justice, Mueller explicitly did not exonerate Trump but also did not charge him, citing Justice Department policy against indicting a sitting president. Trump declared complete and total exoneration, though the report said no such thing. But the political damage to Trump was limited. His supporters believed him innocent, his opponents believed him guilty, and few minds changed. Trump's policy achievements came primarily through executive action and judicial appointments. He couldn't get major legislation through Congress, despite Republicans controlling both chambers for his first 2 years. His signature campaign promise, a wall on the Mexican border, paid for by Mexico, went unfulfilled. Mexico refused to pay, and Congress refused to fully fund it. Trump eventually declared a national emergency to redirect military funding to wall construction, a legally questionable move that Democrats challenged. Trump's one major legislative achievement was a tax cut passed in December 2017. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reduced corporate tax rates from 35% to 21% and provided temporary tax cuts for individuals. Republicans claimed it would boost economic growth. Democrats said it primarily benefited the wealthy and corporations while adding over $1 trillion to the national debt. Trump pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement, the Iran nuclear deal, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He renegotiated NAFTA into the USMCA with minor changes. He imposed tariffs on China, starting a trade war. He moved the US Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, fulfilling a campaign promise that previous presidents had avoided. He met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un in an unprecedented summit that produced no concrete denuclearization. Perhaps Trump's most lasting impact was on the federal judiciary. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, shifting the court's ideology significantly conservative. He appointed over 200 federal judges, more than any president in a single term. These lifetime appointments will shape American law for decades. Trump's presidency was marked by constant scandal and controversy. He was accused of violating the Constitution's Emoluments Clause by profiting from foreign governments using his properties. His children continued running the Trump Organization while serving as White House advisors. His personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, was imprisoned for crimes including campaign finance violations related to paying hush money to women who claimed affairs with Trump. In December 2019, Trump became only the 3rd president in American history to be impeached. The House of Representatives charged him with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress for pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter. The Senate acquitted Trump in February 2020 along largely party lines. Then came COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic reached the United States in early 2020 and became the defining crisis of Trump's presidency. His handling of the pandemic was controversial and arguably cost him re-election. Initially, Trump downplayed the threat. He said it would disappear like a miracle. He compared it to the flu. He resisted lockdowns and public health measures, worried about the economic impact. As the death toll mounted, eventually exceeding 1 million Americans, Trump's messaging remained inconsistent and often contradicted public health experts. Trump held daily press briefings where he clashed with reporters, promoted unproven treatments like hydroxychloroquine, and once suggested injecting disinfectant might be a treatment. He refused to wear a mask for months, making mask wearing a political issue. He caught COVID himself in October 2020 and was hospitalized briefly but recovered. The pandemic devastated the economy. Unemployment spiked, businesses closed, the stock market crashed before recovering. Trump's handling of the crisis became a central issue in the 2020 presidential campaign. Trump faced Joe Biden, the former vice president under Obama. Biden ran as a return to normalcy and competence. Trump ran on his pre-pandemic economy, law and order, and cultural issues. The campaign was conducted largely virtually due to pandemic restrictions. Trump made baseless claims that mail-in voting would lead to massive fraud, laying the groundwork for challenging results if he lost. He refused to commit to accepting the election outcome. As Election Day approached, polls showed Biden ahead, but after 2016, few were confident in polls. The election took place on November 3, 2020. Vote counting took days due to massive mail-in voting. By November 7th, news organizations called the race for Biden. Biden won the popular vote by over 7 million votes and the Electoral College 306 to 232, the same margin Trump had called a landslide when he won in 2016. Trump refused to concede. He filed dozens of lawsuits alleging fraud. Every single one was dismissed, often by judges Trump himself had appointed. He pressured state officials to find votes or overturn results. He called the Georgia Secretary of State and asked him to find 11,780 votes, just enough to flip Georgia. The call was recorded and released publicly. Trump's attorneys, including Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, held press conferences making wild claims about voting machines, flipping votes, dead people voting, and massive conspiracies involving Venezuela and George Soros. They provided no credible evidence. Many claims were so baseless that Fox News cut away from their press conferences. Trump's advisors, including Attorney General William Barr, told him there was no evidence of fraud sufficient to change the outcome. Barr said publicly there was no widespread fraud. Trump was furious and Barr resigned. Despite losing every legal challenge and having no evidence of significant fraud, Trump convinced millions of his supporters that the election had been stolen. He called for his supporters to come to Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, when Congress would certify the Electoral College results. "Be there," he tweeted. "Will be wild." On January 6th, Trump held a rally near the White House. He told the crowd that the election had been stolen, that they needed to fight like hell, and that they should march to the Capitol. "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore," he said. His lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, called for trial by combat. Thousands of Trump supporters marched to the Capitol, where Congress was in session certifying the Electoral College results. They breached police barriers, smashed windows, and stormed into the building. Lawmakers fled. Vice President Mike Pence, who was presiding over the certification and had refused Trump's pressure to reject certain state results, was evacuated to a secure location, while rioters chanted, "Hang Mike Pence." The Capitol was occupied for hours. 5 people died in connection with the riots, including a police officer who suffered a stroke after being attacked and a rioter shot by Capitol Police. Over 140 police officers were injured. The insurrectionists ransacked offices, stole items, and took selfies in the Senate chamber. Trump watched the riot unfold on television from the White House. For hours, he did not call for the rioters to leave. When he finally released a video message, he told them, "We love you, you're very special," while asking them to go home peacefully. He also repeated his claims about the stolen election. Congress reconvened that evening and completed the certification of Biden's victory. Pence, defying Trump's pressure, certified the results that made Biden president-elect. The attack on the Capitol shocked the nation and the world. It was the first time the Capitol had been breached since the War of 1812. It was an attack on American democracy itself, incited by a sitting president who refused to accept his election defeat. In Trump's final days in office, the House of Representatives impeached him for a second time, charging him with incitement of insurrection. He became the only president ever impeached twice. The Senate trial occurred after Trump left office, and he was acquitted again, though 7 Republicans joined Democrats in voting to convict. On January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden was inaugurated as the 46th president. Trump refused to attend the ceremony, breaking with the tradition of outgoing presidents welcoming their successors. He held a small departure ceremony at Joint Base Andrews, then flew to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. His presidency was over, but his influence on American politics was not. After leaving office, Donald Trump faced unprecedented legal and political challenges. Multiple investigations targeted him and his businesses. In New York, prosecutors investigated whether the Trump Organization had committed tax fraud by manipulating property valuations. In Georgia, prosecutors investigated his attempt to overturn the 2020 election results. The Justice Department appointed a special counsel to investigate his retention of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and his role in January 6th. In August 2022, the FBI executed a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, recovering hundreds of classified documents that Trump had taken from the White House. Some documents were marked top secret. Trump claimed he had declassified them, though he provided no evidence. He portrayed the search as political persecution. Trump was indicted 4 times in 2023 and 2024, an unprecedented situation for a former president. The indictments came from Manhattan hush money, payments to Stormy Daniels, from federal prosecutors, classified documents, and January 6th, and from Georgia, election interference. Trump pleaded not guilty to all charges and used the indictments to claim he was a victim of political persecution. His supporters rallied around him. His poll numbers among Republicans increased. Every indictment became a fundraising opportunity and a way to energize his base. The Republican Party remained largely loyal to Trump, despite the insurrection, the election lies, and the indictments. Potential rivals for the 2024 Republican nomination were reluctant to criticize him strongly. Trump maintained an iron grip on the party's base. In November 2022, Trump announced he was running for president again in 2024. He was 76 years old, facing multiple criminal trials, and still claiming the 2020 election had been stolen. Most political observers thought his influence was waning, that Republicans would move on, that his legal troubles would prevent a serious candidacy. They were wrong again. Trump dominated the 2024 Republican primary even more thoroughly than he had in 2016. His opponents, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and others, couldn't gain traction. Trump won primary after primary, securing the nomination quickly. The general election pitted Trump against incumbent President Joe Biden, a rematch of 2020. Biden, now 81, faced questions about his age and mental acuity. The campaign was bitter and polarizing. In a stunning turn of events, in late June 2024, Biden performed poorly in a presidential debate, appearing confused and unfocused. Democratic panic set in. By late July 2024, Biden withdrew from the race, under pressure from his own party, an unprecedented move for an incumbent president seeking re-election. Vice President Kamala Harris quickly secured the Democratic nomination. The race reset, but Trump had momentum. On November 5, 2024, Trump won the presidential election, defeating Harris decisively. He won not just the Electoral College, but also the popular vote, something he had never done before and that Republicans hadn't done in 20 years. On January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States. At 78, he became the oldest person ever inaugurated as president and the second president to serve non-consecutive terms, following Grover Cleveland in the 19th century. The man who had been impeached twice, indicted 4 times, and blamed for an insurrection was back in the White House. It was the most remarkable political comeback in American history. To understand Donald Trump's impact on America and the world requires looking beyond the man himself to what he represented, what he revealed, and what he changed. The populist wave. Trump's rise was part of a global populist wave in the 2010s. Brexit in Britain, far-right movements in Europe, nationalist leaders in Hungary, Brazil, and the Philippines all reflected similar currents. Distrust of elites, anger at globalization, cultural anxiety about demographic change, and resentment of establishment institutions. Trump didn't create these forces, but he harnessed them brilliantly in the American context. He understood that millions of Americans felt left behind by economic changes, ignored by coastal elites, and disrespected by cultural shifts. He spoke to their grievances in language they understood. He didn't sound like a politician because he wasn't one. Whether Trump genuinely shared these grievances or simply exploited them is debatable. He was a New York billionaire who lived in a gold-plated penthouse and had been part of the elite his entire life. But he successfully presented himself as an outsider fighting for forgotten Americans against a corrupt establishment. The media relationship. Trump's relationship with media was revolutionary and destructive. He understood that in the digital age, attention was currency, outrage generated attention. So he was deliberately outrageous, knowing that media outlets, even hostile ones, would cover him constantly because he generated ratings and clicks. Trump bypassed traditional media filters by using Twitter directly. He could speak to millions of followers without journalists as intermediaries. When media corrected his false statements, he attacked them as fake news and biased. He created an information ecosystem where his supporters trusted him more than professional journalists. This had profound consequences for American democracy. A large portion of the population no longer accepted objective facts or shared reality. If Trump said something, his supporters believed it regardless of evidence. If media contradicted him, it proved media bias. Truth became tribal. The transformation of the Republican Party. Trump transformed the Republican Party ideologically and culturally. The party moved from free trade to protectionism, from promoting democracy abroad to America First isolationism, from fiscal conservatism to accepting massive deficits, from family values to tolerating Trump's personal behavior. More fundamentally, the party became a personality cult. Loyalty to Trump mattered more than conservative principles. Republicans who criticized Trump, like Mitt Romney or Liz Cheney, were ostracized. Those who defended him were rewarded. The party's policy positions became whatever Trump said they were. Traditional Republican elites, the Chamber of Commerce, neoconservatives, fiscal hawks, all lost influence. Trump's working-class populist base became dominant. The party became more diverse, racially improving with Hispanic voters, while becoming more culturally conservative and combative. The polarization acceleration. American polarization intensified dramatically during and after Trump's presidency. Politics became tribal identity more than policy disagreement. Republicans and Democrats increasingly lived in different information ecosystems, believed different facts, and viewed each other not as opponents, but as enemies. Trump didn't create polarization. It had been growing for decades, but he accelerated it. His rhetoric was deliberately divisive. He mocked opponents, questioned their patriotism, and encouraged his supporters to view political differences as existential conflicts. Democrats responded with equal intensity, viewing Trump as a fascist threat to democracy. This polarization had real consequences. Political violence increased. Families and friendships fractured over politics. Bipartisan cooperation in Congress nearly disappeared. Americans increasingly sorted geographically, ideologically, and culturally into separate tribes. The assault on truth and institutions. Trump's presidency featured an unprecedented assault on truth and institutions. He made over 30,000 false or misleading claims as president, according to fact-checkers. He attacked the FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, the military, the courts, the media, scientists, doctors, and any institution that contradicted him. This had two effects. First, it eroded public trust in institutions, particularly among Trump supporters. If the FBI investigated Trump, it was corrupt. If courts ruled against him, they were biased. If scientists contradicted him on COVID, they were lying. Institutional authority collapsed for a significant portion of the population. Second, it created a permission structure for lying. If the president lied constantly without consequences, others felt free to do the same. Political discourse became less about truth and more about what narrative you could sell. The cult of personality. Trump inspired a level of devotion unusual in American politics. His supporters didn't just vote for him, they wore his merchandise, attended his rallies like religious services, believed his claims without question, and viewed criticism of him as personal attacks on themselves. This personality cult had religious overtones. Some evangelical Christians literally compared Trump to biblical figures or claimed he was chosen by God. Trump merchandise featured imagery of Trump as a warrior, a superhero, or even Christ-like. The American flag and Trump flags flew together, sometimes with Trump flags higher. This phenomenon revealed something about American culture: a desire for strongman leadership, a need for certainty in uncertain times, and a tribalism that made political leaders into identity markers. Trump fulfilled psychological needs beyond policy. The business record. Evaluating Trump's business career is complicated because he has never fully disclosed his finances. He claims to be worth billions. Forbes estimated his net worth at around $2.6 billion in 2024. Other analysts have suggested much less. What's undeniable is that Trump built a real estate empire, licensed his name globally, and created a powerful brand. What's also undeniable is that he bankrupted multiple businesses, faced thousands of lawsuits, routinely stiffed contractors, and made numerous failed ventures. Trump's genius was in branding and promotion, not operational excellence. He understood that perception mattered more than reality, that the Trump name had value even when Trump businesses failed. He monetized his celebrity through licensing and reality TV when his real estate empire was struggling. Whether he's a brilliant businessman or a serial failure depends on your metrics and which parts of his career you emphasize. His supporters see a successful tycoon. His critics see a fraud who inherited wealth, squandered it, and survived through shameless self-promotion. The character question. Trump's character has been debated endlessly. He displays traits that would be considered deeply problematic in any other context. Pathological lying, narcissism, cruelty, vindictiveness, lack of empathy, sexual misconduct, and contempt for rules and norms. He has been credibly accused of sexual assault by dozens of women. He was found liable for sexual abuse in a civil trial. He paid hush money to a porn star. He mocked a disabled reporter, prisoners of war, and Gold Star families. He encouraged violence at his rallies. He separated immigrant families at the border as a deterrent policy. Yet his supporters either don't believe the accusations, don't care about them, or actively like that he's politically incorrect and doesn't apologize. This reveals a deep cultural divide about what matters in leadership. Is character important, or is it just delivering results for your side? As of 2026, Donald Trump is back in the White House, beginning his second term. The story is ongoing, the ending unwritten. But we can identify his impact so far, and the questions his career raises. Political legacy. Trump proved that political outsiders could win the presidency. He showed that traditional qualifications, government experience, policy expertise, decorum weren't necessary. He demonstrated that media coverage, even negative coverage, could be leveraged into political power. He transformed the Republican Party in his image, creating a populist, nationalist movement that will outlast him. Future Republican politicians will imitate his style, his rhetoric, and his willingness to break norms. The party has been permanently changed. Trump also damaged American democratic norms. He refused to accept election results, encouraged an attack on the Capitol, and convinced millions that elections were rigged. He attacked the free press, the independent judiciary, and the rule of law. These wounds to democratic institutions may take generations to heal. Cultural legacy. Trump accelerated America's cultural divisions and made political identity more central to how Americans see themselves. He gave permission to express views that had been socially unacceptable, whether that's liberation from political correctness or normalization of bigotry depends on your perspective. He changed what's acceptable in political discourse. Insults, personal attacks, conspiracy theories, and shameless lies became normal. Future politicians will feel less constrained by truth or decorum. The guardrails of civil discourse have been removed. International legacy. Trump damaged America's international relationships and credibility. He questioned alliances, cozied up to dictators, withdrew from international agreements, and made America seem unreliable. Trust in American leadership declined globally during his presidency. He also exposed weaknesses in the international order. His America First nationalism resonated domestically, even as it alarmed allies. Future American presidents will face a world less trusting of American commitments and more willing to act independently. The open questions. Many questions about Trump remain unanswered. Will his criminal cases result in convictions? Can a president pardon himself? Will he face accountability for January 6th? Will his second term be more effective or more chaotic than his first? Will he be constrained by institutions, or will he successfully consolidate power? What happens to Trumpism after Trump? Will the movement survive without him, or will it dissipate when he's gone? Did Trump reveal problems in American democracy that need fixing, or did he create problems that didn't exist before? Is he a symptom of American decline or a cause of it? Was his presidency an aberration or the new normal? The complexity. Donald Trump defies simple categorization. He's not purely evil or purely good, not entirely competent or entirely incompetent, not completely honest or completely dishonest. He contains contradictions. He's a billionaire who connected with working-class Americans. He's a New Yorker who became the champion of rural America. He's a serial adulterer who became the hero of evangelical Christians. He's a man who claims to love America while attacking its institutions. He's a president who lost the popular vote twice, but changed American politics permanently. Understanding Trump requires holding contradictions simultaneously. He's a brilliant marketer and a con artist. He's attuned to certain truths about America and a pathological liar about others. He's authentic in his lack of authenticity. He's a genius at some things and spectacularly incompetent at others. The final assessment. History's judgment of Donald Trump will depend on what happens next. If American democracy survives and strengthens, he may be seen as a temporary aberration, a stress test that revealed weaknesses that were then fixed. If democracy deteriorates further, he may be seen as the figure who broke it irreparably. If his policies on trade, immigration, and foreign affairs prove wise in hindsight, he'll be reassessed positively. If they prove disastrous, his reputation will suffer. If the Republican Party's transformation proves electorally successful and ideologically coherent, he'll be credited. If it leads to minority rule and democratic backsliding, he'll be condemned. What seems certain is that Donald Trump will be studied for generations as one of the most consequential and controversial figures in American history. Love him or hate him, he mattered. He changed things. He forced Americans to confront questions about who they are, what they value, and what kind of country they want to be. The story of Donald Trump is quintessentially American in the most complicated ways. It's a story of ambition, reinvention, and second chances. It's a story of showmanship, salesmanship, and the power of branding. It's a story of exploiting systems, breaking rules, and surviving consequences that would destroy others. It's also a story about America itself, what we reward, what we tolerate, what we aspire to, and what we've become. Trump succeeded because something in America wanted what he offered. Millions of Americans saw him and said, "Yes, this is my champion. This is the man I trust to fight for me." Understanding why requires grappling with uncomfortable truths about American culture. We value winners over character. We're drawn to certainty over complexity. We prefer entertaining lies to boring truths. We want someone to blame for our problems and someone to promise simple solutions. Trump gave America what it asked for, and America is still figuring out how to process what it received. From the outer boroughs of Queens to the White House, from bankruptcy to billions, from reality TV to the presidency, from defeat to comeback, Donald Trump's story is improbable, controversial, and unfinished. He promised to make America great again. Whether he did so, or whether he damaged it irreparably, or whether the truth is somewhere in between, future generations will debate. What's undeniable is that he changed America, for better or worse, in ways that will reverberate for decades. The boy who learned from his father that life was combat, that you had to win at all costs, that perception mattered more than reality. That boy became the man who applied those lessons to business, to celebrity, and ultimately to politics. He won in ways his father could never have imagined, and he lost in ways that would have destroyed anyone with less resilience or shamelessness. Donald Trump is many things to many people: hero and villain, genius and fraud, savior and destroyer, truth-teller and liar. He's loved and hated with equal intensity. He inspires devotion and disgust. He divides every room he enters. But he cannot be ignored, and that, perhaps more than anything else, is exactly what he always wanted. The story continues. The Trump presidency resumes. The impact expands. The debates rage on. And America, polarized, uncertain, transformed, continues to grapple with the phenomenon of Donald Trump and what his success says about who we are.